People, it is my Farming Friday focus today, and we're going to be talking to some producers in Leicestershire, talking about how they produce their beef and sheep differently. Grazers from Ashby Parva or in Parva. I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. But Jess and Steve will be joining us shortly to talk about the way they're farming. I think the farming of beef is very topical at the moment, with a lot of alarming research being presented about the impact on climate, how we produce all our food, whether that's beef, grain, vegetables. It all depends on how we're producing it, the inputs, how we're growing it. Hi Jess.
Hello.
It's always such a relief when the technology works, isn't it? So you can all relax. I was just introducing you. In my mind, you're always Grazers, and I got to the Ashby bit, and I didn't know it's Ashby Parva. Oh, I got in the right middle. Ashby Parva. What is it?
Yeah, Ashby Parva, the village that
Ashby
we live
Parva,
in. Yeah.
Forgive me. So I suddenly got caught out thinking, I just refer to them as Grazers. So, and I was just introducing, the issue at the moment. Beef's very topical at the moment with COP26 going on, and how beef is produced seems to be impacting the impact on the climate. From my perspective, a lot of what I see is research coming out of Northern America, with these very intensive farming systems. And certainly from my perspective, with all food, it depends on how we are growing it, impacting not only the impact on our biodiversity and the climate and our soil health, but also nutrient density and on flavour too. And so these Friday focuses is connecting with farmers like you around this country, so that your story can be heard, that actually there is a different way to farm. And actually in the UK, so much of our land is pasture land that can't be used for anything else. We cannot get combine harvesters up some of these, glens and valleys and what have you. And actually, in the UK, the use of upcycling that pasture using cows and sheep actually is a really, a positive way to produce food. And we need to understand that the solutions are very different to each country and each area. I got to visit you, it must be over a year ago.
It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah, to hear your amazing story about how you're doing it differently, how you've got into this. So Jess, just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've got into farming and how you're farming.
Yeah, so Steve, my husband, and I run a really small livestock farm in South Leicestershire. And we are both from generations of farming, but this side of it is Steve and I's. It's our setup. It's our decision to go down this line, and so we've adopted loads of how the previous generations did it, and 100% grass fed. We don't feed our animals on anything else. The way in which we farm is by many classed as, well, we call it traditional. Some other farmers would call it really out of date. But we find that it's actually working really well for not only our animals, their health, their welfare, but actually the environment as well. That old school.
And Jess, just to pause you there, if people aren't familiar with how beef is raised intensively and some of the concerns around, the climate impact is what they're fed is really important. So on the whole, soy is fed to our animals, or grain, to be able to fatten them quicker, to grow them quicker. Yeah. Certainly with soy, it's coming from mainly Brazil is the biggest exporter. They're often cutting down the rainforest in order to produce soy, but that isn't the only way to raise beef. As we've said, we have rich pastures here in the UK. We don't need those inputs. We don't have to use those inputs, but it does mean that you have to grow slower. And that is that your experience?
Yeah, part of the reason that we got into this was that we were producing really slow reared cattle. Now, so when I say slow reared, I mean that our cattle weren't ready to go to market until probably about 2.5 years old, just before 30 months. They were about ready to go.
And what's the contrast with that? What happens?
Yeah, so the majority of what many others are producing is that they have been corn fed, And so they can be ready from about 11 months.
Wow.
Ready to go. The problem that we found was that we've always looked at it from the farmer's perspective of that we have these lovely native breeds, South Devons, and we couldn't understand why when we sent them to market, they didn't do very well. They didn't make a lot of money compared to a lot of others. And when we really started to look into it, it turns out that the majority, obviously, of livestock bought in our markets are bought by those 8 big food corporations that you talk about, Sally, all the time. And they want it to, the best way I can explain it to people is that they want it to fit the supermarket packaging.
Yeah.
And the supermarket packaging is an animal that is about 11, 13 months old. So a sirloin steak compared to our sirloin steaks off our animals that are 30 months old, they're not comparable. So yeah, the supermarkets certainly don't reward you for slow growing your animals on grass only diets.
Yeah. So what's been some of your solution about getting your products out there? I know what you're doing, but tell us how you have developed that.
So we set it up about 2.5 years ago. It's really early on, and we decided to put an on-site butchery on the farm, which was a big step for us, because although we are generations of farming above us, this was definitely our project, and it was financially done by Steve and I only. So to put an on-site butchery room on was a big investment to make. So we now sell, we have a great website. We put a lot of money and time into our website to enable people to be able to get click and collect straight from the farm, and then nationwide delivery. And we recently in June set up a very small farm shop, which is only open on a Friday and a Saturday, but it enables people to come in and try. And we've pulled sort of some other farms together that are doing it in a really great way as well, for things like milk and butter and all those kind of things.
Yeah. And if we're looking at this whole issue around sustainability and wanting to buy well, we need to shorten that supply chain as much as possible, don't we? And we need, I always say, we need to get as close to the farm gate as possible. So they are literally coming on to the farm gate,
yes, they are,
to be able to buy your produce. So what we've got here is you're describing a different way of feeding, so pasture fed. I think I saw you at Farm Ed looking at some herbal lays.
Yes.
So again, people just think cows just eat grass, but actually there's different things that they can eat that you can put in your fields that impact whether they need to be wormed or impact maybe even the flavour of the meat. I don't know about that yet, but is that something you're exploring at the moment in terms of what you're feeding? Yeah,
we're really, as we've gone further into this, I call it like a journey really, because it is farming, but it's a whole new world when you're actually looking at the meat that you're producing rather than just looking at the animals that are in the field. So along this journey, we've got so excited, ridiculously excited actually, about places like Farm Ed. So we've made sure that we've made contact with people, and I think that what is coming out of this, and I think Instagram creates a great community for this, is that we're starting to talk and we're starting to exchange knowledge, and that's why we went to Farm Ed, because they're so far ahead of the game. It's unbelievable. It's a journey.
So just again, Jess, if people don't know what Farm Ed is, it's a kind of functioning small farm and education centre for people like me who are not farmers, but for farmers to learn about this idea of regenerative farming. And regenerative farming is all about leaving the land better than how we found it. It's looking at practices that enhance that, everything from growing vegetables to how you grow beef to how you do dairy. They can be found, I think their website is Real Farm Ed. I think that might be their handle too. It's really worth following some of their conversation. They really present a lot of the research in a different way, and help think bigger about some of these issues around climate and our food and sustainability. They're a great resource, aren't they, for our nation?
Yeah, without a doubt, they're mind blowing.
So is it just beef you're doing, or what else are you up to?
So we do beef, lamb and pork, and then as I say, we're starting to pull other small farms together to create a bit of a community of you know, just locally sourced but really good quality food, real food.
Yeah. And how are you on that journey with growing pork and your lamb? I mean, is it similar? Is it a bit of a journey you're on, adapting, changing things, or?
It is, and I think it's a long journey. So when we start to talk about things like regenerative farming and sustainable farming, I have to sort of explain to people this isn't done in a year. It's not done in a couple of years. It's, you know, it's a 10-year project. It can be longer than a 10-year project. But British farmers, without doubt, are the ones that are leading the way in this. So the knowledge that's in the UK on sustainability in agriculture is just unbelievable.
And I think we really need to be clear. Like, it really irritates me when you can see some quite provocative messages put out there, drawing from research that isn't in our country. You know, there is no global diet. There is no one global solution. We need to be tapping into what's going on into our economy, into our land, even to our area, and not be duped into thinking that we're all doing it, you know, intensively. It is, a lot of our farming is intensive in the UK, without a doubt. Farmers, I don't point any fingers. They did what we asked. We wanted yield, they gave us yield. So this isn't a blame thing, and I am filled with such hope as I visited farms around the nation and tapping into things like Farm Ed, that, you know, the backbone of British farming is family farmers, and, you know, they love what they do, and they want to, you know, produce good, move from producing commodity to producing, you know, being food producers. And so it is exciting, and I'm excited to do this on Fridays, because I want people who, you know, I've got my little world, and they're often asking, where do I get this stuff? You know, I don't want to be doing supermarket anymore. And you've got people like you who are pioneering things, along with a whole host of other family farms where people can buy directly from you. Now, one of the things I love about your story, Jess, is also the impact it's had on your community locally. Tell me a little bit about your experience of that, of bringing people onto the farm and buying directly from you.
Yeah, it is. I think when you start to look into selling direct to the public, you just have no idea what a community you will build up, and that's a big part of for Steve and I, is this community. And it doesn't matter whether they live right on the doorstep or whether they make a bit of a journey. They're making a massive difference by buying from us. They're making a huge difference to us as a small family farm. And I say all the time to people that sustainability, we talk about it all the time, and how, you know, with regards to the environment and the soil, but sustainability must mean as well that it's creating an income for that small farm to still be there in generations to come. Because if it's not financially viable and financially sustainable for the farmer themselves, it's not sustainable. No. There's an extra element to this sustainability, and it must be that small farms like ours, we do become a community, whether you have it click and collect or nationwide and we don't ever see you, you still communicate with us through the powers of social media, and you do mean a great deal to us, because it's that sustainability for the farmer. And although Steve and I are so passionate about sustainability for the environment, it's got to be financially sustainable for the farmer themselves. Yeah,
absolutely. And then obviously there's the taste bit. It's all very well producing, you know, slow grown food in, you know, in harmony with nature, but if it tastes shit, who wants to eat it? But
exactly.
I could just say from experience, having had your boxes, you know, and my experience again and again is that the more we look after our soil, the more we think about what we're feeding our animals, the more slow grown it is, the better it tastes. Like,
it's a different taste, isn't it? It's I can only describe it as real food. It is a different taste, and quite often people go, Oh wow, I didn't realise that it can taste like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know, you know, I was part of a little project we tried where we got together, because sometimes buying meat can be expensive. We got together as a community. There were a number of families, and you did us some beef boxes and bought all, you know, I think Chris came down and got them for you and bought them up, and we all divvied it up between us, and it made it a lot more affordable for us. And so there are ways around that, like from affordability point of view, you know, there are cuts that just aren't as popular, but if you've got a slow cooker, you can make everything taste
I'm the slow cooker queen, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And you do, you know, what I've loved also with you, Jess, you know, you're great with your social media. You're often telling, you know, your people about that, your lamb boxes or beef boxes and ideas of how to cook them. And so we can have great produce if we just want to think a little bit different. It doesn't have to be inconvenient with our cooking if we've invested in a slow cooker. You know, if you've got a little small chest freezer buying direct, you can buy a bit more in bulk and see that through the months. But you've also, you did have, I know COVID has probably changed things, but you had a little community room on your farm that you were looking to use for sort of education. How's that?
Yeah, so that's a massive project undergoing at the moment. We've got all the all the sheds on the yard are all coming down. Having a complete overhaul, and an educational centre will soon be on its way. I have taught in primary education for many years, and so combine that with being the farmer's wife, it became very apparent to me that there is a massive gap between agriculture and the general public. And the general public, if we can get them at primary school and secondary school age, my opinion on sustainability and regenerative farming and British farming as a whole is that education is the absolute key to this.
No, it totally is. And I think also, I think, you know, from a medical point of view, you know, one of our big things is we're very disconnected with nature. We're disconnected with our communities. We're disconnected from the land. And that has a negative impact on our physical and mental health. And these opportunities to get our children to get ourselves, you know, back in nature, understanding where our food comes from, you know, is absolutely key, not only to know what to eat, but, you know, in terms of the experience of life, you know, nature has an incredible impact, you know, on how we feel about ourselves and about the world. And certainly my own experience, you know, as an adult, I'm in my late 40s, and, you know, this whole journey of where our food's coming from is new to me. I've only, you know, been exploring it the last 3 years, but I feel like it has changed me in terms of how I value food. Like I feel like if I serve some beef, you know, I pause. Like, this is, I understand where it's come from. I understand the cost of the animal. I understand more about the farmer, and there's just a deep sense of gratitude, and it enhances my whole experience of eating, of sharing a meal with my family. And it really has, it's not what I expected. Like, you know, I'm a bit of an academic and I just want to learn all the science, but I also love food. I want it to taste good and I want to help people be healthy. But it was almost like a spiritual awakening for me, you know, reconnecting with the land, reconnecting with our farmers. Like, it was the bit I didn't expect that has brought such life to me. And so, you know, I really do encourage people to connect with you. Just tell us a little bit about that. So you've got your website, and obviously they can get you here on Instagram. Is there anything else you want to say to connect people to you?
No, not really, I don't think. Just that there's so many brilliant farms, small family farms across the UK, and I know the counter argument is that we can't all set up websites and we can't all set up farm shops. No, we can't. But if we can pull a community together to pull various farms under one roof, then we can do that. And I understand that a lot of farmers don't want to go out into the public domain, but there's lots of small farms that you've interviewed, so many of them, Sally, that are doing such a great job. And even if you can't go onto the farm, I think doing things like Instagram lives where you're actually on the farm I think is brilliant, because you're bringing people onto your farm, and that certainly, although it's been great for us financially, you know, we've done far better by selling it direct to the public. The most important thing is this sense of education, and like you say, reconnecting people with the value that food has, particularly meat. You know, that the animal has died to produce that food on your plate, and the journey that the farmer has had to go through to get that food to your plate is unbelievable.
Yeah, totally. And again, just I can see we've got a few farmers on at the moment, so I'm really keen to keep interviewing people. So do DM me if you want to be brave and do an Instagram live. It's not that bad, is it, Jess?
No, it's fine. No, it's my first one, and it's actually really easy.
Yeah. And I'm not a monster. So, you know, for my consumers, you know, I think there's journeys, isn't there? There's this journey of food impacts our health, it impacts the climate, impacts our family, it impacts generations. Like, so I think an initial step for people, it's moving away from factory made food and it's starting to eat real whole food. And then I think there's this journey of actually saying, well, where has this food come from? And I think the first step is to buy British, regardless, you know, of how that's produced. Britain has some of the highest farming standards in the world. So our first decision is look on that packet, look where it's come from. Don't buy it from New Zealand and Chile and Argentina. Buy British. And then there's this next question of like, well, okay, I've changed that in my life. You know, how can I, you know, reach out and get away from supermarket buying? So it might be, you know, actually finding a farm shop. It might be looking online. It might be reaching out to you and starting to produce that way. It's like we have to go on this journey. We can't always go from one to the other end. And
no, and it sounds like a cliche, but it really is a journey. And the first step of that, you are entirely right, is a relatively straightforward one. Buy British. I cannot emphasize that anymore. Buy British, because let me assure you, when you don't buy British, you are supporting something that is hidden in the background, and if you actually understood the impact of not buying British, it would alarm you. So buy British is the first step, and like you say, that journey, then you naturally just become more inquisitive. I think you want to then think, well, actually, where in the UK is this coming from, and how was it farmed?
And I think, you know, it's totally brilliant, you know, point of view. If we're all getting uppity about climate, I mean, the first thing we do is buy local. I mean, there's no, you know, why get it from Australia? And I think people don't understand that farming standards are different around the world, and they are non-comparable. Sally, you just cannot compare Britain to any other nation. And so no, that's a great take home for people. I've just seen Lucy Williamson's on with us. She's the most fabulous nutritionist, and she's always you know, banging the drum around British farming as well. And from a health perspective, we say again, the biggest thing that you can do for your health is eat real food. Don't get complicated by all the different arguments. 70% of our food, our calories, well, 67% of our calories are from ultra processed factory made food. The biggest thing we can do for our health is just start eating real food. The biggest thing we can do for our climate is probably start buying local and finding producers like you. So, you know, thanks, Jess. You know, thanks for all the hard work. I know it must be, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning at times with all your kids as well. With mum, you know, there must be times when it's dark and horrible and lonely, and you think why you're doing it. But for me, you know, our farmers have the health of our nation in their hands, and so it's great to be able to connect with you and wholeheartedly just recommend you to other people. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and thank you. Hope to be eating some more of your meat very soon.
Okay, thanks, Sally. Bye.
All right, bless you. Bye, guys. Bye.